excited to be here.
Thanks for joining. Cool. Yeah, so again, like, Aaliyah, feel free to speak whenever you want. You have the freedom to share your voice.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be a part of today's chat.
And then Aaliyah, just so you know, oh, sorry. That's from YouTube. Sorry about that. So usually, I'll give people a few more minutes. I mean, it's a holiday weekend, unfortunately, but it's still really important to do this. And I just want to say something, and I will say this when we go live. Maryella, I am not feeling as not uncomfortable, as nervous as I have in previous chats, because Aaliyah, just, to be honest, it's been really uncomfortable for me to like say the word Black and to like have these conversations in my position, and not because I don't want to have them, just because it's, everything that surrounds it is uncomfortable. So I'm really happy, and I'm going to say that on the chat too. Yeah. So
good.
We'll give people a few more minutes. Yes.
I think that's a pretty common feeling right now. I'm reading a book right now called White Fragility, and it speaks specifically about, as white people, we often don't have to think of ourselves in racial terms. And so when we are asked to, it kind of takes us aback. However, Black and brown people have been having to do that, in the entire existence of this country. And so therefore probably their whole life. So I think it's really great to kind of push through that. And as you've said, like, the more you talk about it and the more you kind of unpack the unconscious, like, things that we know, it does get easier. And you can kind of use that knowledge to say, oh my God, thank you. I'm so glad I know not to do this. Or I'm so glad I know to approach this situation this way, because it just brings about clarity and understanding for all of us. And I'm really excited to be a part of this and to also learn as well. It's going to be cool.
Oh my gosh, yes. And it's really like, I love these conversations, and I love that we're able to do this because it is so important. And I think as a white person too, it's been really important for me to avoid that like savior kind of thing that I think it's just happening because a lot of people are uncomfortable with this, and they're like, what can I do? And it's important to realize this isn't about you. This is about the Black community and lifting them up and elevating their voices. But it's just uncomfortable, but positively uncomfortable, because it's uncomfortable towards growth and uncomfortable towards making an impact. So
you're saying so much. You're dropping so much knowledge. I want you to like save that for when we go live, because I think a lot of people feel like you feel that way and want to. It's nice that you can voice that, and I love that these safe spaces are allowing for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then so in just another minute, I'll hit record. So I'm going to share the deck, actually, get that up. Let me just make sure I don't have it open to one place.
If you're joining us, I invite you to turn your cameras on for visibility's sake. We want to be able to point you out and be like, we're starting the revolution together. Make that eye contact across the road. Like, I see you. I appreciate you. So you're more than welcome to turn your cameras on, or if you can't, totally understand, no pressure at all.
Perfect. So I'm going to hit record, and then we will get right into this chat. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me again today for our weekly chat series, Lift Every Voice and Act. This is a really special time and a safe place for everyone. So I'm really thankful to everyone who's joining and, people who will be watching this afterwards. So, as to not take up too much time, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping things. We'll have this recorded, so we will send the recording afterwards so you can share with people and help spread the information to empower more action and impact. And please turn on your cameras and come off of mute. This is such a special environment. If you have attended other chat learns, this is really a place that Maryella and her guests do a fantastic job of facilitating conversation and making this a place where you can share your experience and talk about these difficult topics. I am really open to sharing my experiences with not racism, you know, racism from the other side of being in a white community, living in rural America. And I feel really honored to be able to share that in a safe space and have people educate me and everyone else on this chat. So with all that said, please feel free to write in the chat if you have a question, if you have a comment, and if you feel uncomfortable at any point saying it, you know, to the whole group, you can always write to us anonymously. You can write to Maryella anonymously, myself anonymously, and I will rename myself to Nicole so you can find me. And so with that intro, I'm going to pass it off to our lovely speakers.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nicole. And thank you everyone for joining us live. And if you're watching this recording, I appreciate you as well for taking the time out of your busy schedules to share and to learn and grow together. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity to speak. Thank you, PowerToFly, for this weekly chat series. If you haven't seen the other ones before, if you have not joined on our first two, we cry, we laugh, we get uncomfortable, and that's the purpose, right? A lot of us are kind of trapped in between four walls right now. I'm in Argentina. We're going back to phase one, and it's like, oh my gosh, I was so close to going out into nature. So, you know, I really, really appreciate this time, you know, from the bottom of my heart. So not to take too long with my introduction, I identify as an artist. That's like the best way that I can share myself with the world without building walls and putting up lines and, you know, kind of distancing myself from our shared experience. I believe that we are all artists and we are all born creative beings. And I just had I guess I just had the path open up for me to where I decided to pursue my art on the regular. So with that said, my service in this crazy time that we're experiencing, our shared experience in the world, is to have these chats, you know, to create a safe space, whether digitally or one day soon in person, so that we can activate, act together, work on ourselves. I love to talk about emotional intelligence and just to get more connected with being silent and to being in touch with our emotions, to then move forward and take action so that we can essentially heal and create a better world. So with that said, part of my service is to offer my free voice workshops, which entail, you know, being more comfortable with being yourself. Nicole will share a little later some things that we were chatting about offline, is how these talks are really uncomfortable to have, just because they've been swept under the rug for so long. So, you know, you might have this ball of energy that is like either traps your voice or makes you say some things that you probably wish you would have like reflected on a little bit before. So I am offering that as my service to everyone in this time. So feel free to reach out to me on my email, and I'm happy to help you grow your voice. And so with that said, I would like to take a moment of silence just to honor all of the lives that have been lost, and all of the people who are currently fighting for our rights, human rights. We are all born equal, and it's about time that we tear these walls down and we really connect. So I just want to take a moment to observe that. And if you are in a place where you can keep your feet grounded and have a connection with gravity, that would be best. And you can keep your eyes open or closed, whatever you like, but I'd just like to take a couple of seconds of silence here. Beautiful, thank you so much. So I live in Argentina, but I'm from Los Angeles, but I've been living outside of the States for some time now. And I find it really a really special moment to bring this beautiful poem back, you know, into our awareness that was written a long time ago. You can watch our first chat to get some more info about this poem, and also, you know, use your search engine of choice to find. And I just want to take a moment here to sing this with you today. If you know the poem, feel free to say it to yourself or out loud, or feel free to sing it with me. And I know that some of you were introduced to this poem on the first chat series, so it'd be cool if you could sing along, as this is our third chat so far. So lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the listening God. Let it resound
loud as the rolling sea.
Sing a song of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day, let us march on till victory is won.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, I'm happy that you all are sharing this song with me. And I'm just, a part of why we sing this and start our chats this way is because I don't want this to be a trend where everyone is, you know, focused one day on learning and educating themselves, and then the next day goes. So a part of the power of emotional intelligence is repetition. You know, you can call it making a ritual, or just setting, you know, these tasks that you just can't avoid. You need to maybe put in your calendar, or in this case, we start off our chats just to get us all kind of grounded and reflecting in a beautiful way. So again, thank you for taking time to sing this with me. And I would love to hear some feedback from some of our live callers. Just what do you think about, how do you feel when you say these words? And if this was your first time or your third time, I would love to hear from you.
And I'll chime in until anyone feels comfortable chiming in as well. You know, Maryella, this is my third time now doing this, although not that this has been going on so long, but I feel like I've learned and grown a lot just from being on these chats. And so it brought a different type of emotion out of me. I almost started crying again, but, you know, trying to not cry. But I think what struck me the most was, one, that I didn't know about this. And I think this is a really beautiful part of history that we should all know about, like many things that were not shown in school and taught. And I think that the part that sticks out to me the most is, let us march on until victory is won. And, you know, you would think that the victory would have been won, right? Racial inequality at a basis. And it's just so, there's still so much racial inequality. And yes, Rob said that your voices are beautiful, and Lydia loved how intentional it was. And so, you know, with that, that's kind of what stuck out most to me. And I always love these chats. So I'll pass it on to anyone else who feels comfortable sharing.
All right. So if no one else wants, oh, go ahead. Yes, Lydia.
I was here also last week, or the week before that, and I also got very emotional when I heard it, you know, because I had never heard it before, and I just thought it was beautiful, and I love how intentional you are about these gatherings, and I haven't seen that anywhere else like that, how intentional you are behind it. So I love it. I love being a part of it.
Thank you, Lydia. So for me, I mean, I just to put this in your pipe and smoke it, you know, if you can bring some of this intentional space into your personal life and maybe even in your work life, that would really help, you know, put some fire in this movement, because essentially, in my opinion, we're all even though we're uber connected, we're completely disconnected if we're, you know, allowing this to happen. And let's go into some of the things actually just to kind of see where we are in the world, just to kind of put this really in our face. I just want to do like a scan here for our live callers. What do you feel when you see this? What do you think about when you see this image, this historic moment in the world, really? If you want to write in the chat box, that's cool. If you want to take yourself off of mute, that's cool as well.
I just wanted to chime in here while people are typing in the chat box that Margot said that it's very powerful and she loved it and that it was beautifully sung. And then, you know, also while people are writing in the chat box, and feel free to come off of mute at any time as well, I wanted to reiterate that. Can you explain this? And I'm sorry, I don't know if it's, but like the image of their hands and what that means. And also, is it okay for white people to do this? And I love that I get to ask these questions on here. So thank you everyone for being so gracious and letting me be, you know, ignorant to so much and allowing to provide the space for this. So.
Absolutely. And actually, if we go to the next slide, we can see actually these three guys having a conversation about it. And I think that that would actually, not this one, the next one, and then maybe we can go back. So I don't know if you know what was happening during the '68 Summer Games, but you know, there were two people of color, Black men from the States who had placed in the Olympics, and there was an Australian runner, Peter Norman, who stood by them. And what I want to really acknowledge in this moment is that his courage actually ended his career, which is so sad to think about, just because, you know, of someone wanting to share solidarity and wanting to, you know, participate in a way that wouldn't, I think he expected no harm to come out of it. I'm sure he also had no idea what was going to happen during this time with everything that was going on in the world. And so, sorry, Nicole, if you can go to the next slide, I think it explains it there. You jumped ahead of with my slides here and the question. But here, all right. So as the athletes waited to go to the podium, Carlos and Smith told Norman that they planned to use their win as an opportunity to protest. Smith and Carlos decided to appear on the podium bearing symbols of protest and strength: Black socked feet without shoes to bring attention to Black poverty, beads to protest lynchings, and a raised Black glove fist to represent their solidarity and support with Black people and oppressed people around the world. So I hope that that answers your question. And then in that case, again, I am not the representative of all Black people. I am holding this conversation so that we can make space to be open and honest. And also, I always challenge everyone to speak to as many people as they can and form their own opinions. And also to be always coming from a place of balance and love when you are approaching this very sensitive topic. So Nicole, I really thank you and applaud you for asking, is it okay? Can I do this? And I would say, based on this description, what do you think that your next action should be, or your response for this question that you had would be?
I mean, you know, based on all of this, I would say that it's okay, as it represents solidarity. And, you know, something that we were talking about before that I know we wanted to bring up here was the threat that people feel for expressing solidarity at times, right? And, you know, personally, I can share my own experiences. As I said, I'm from rural white town America, and that is very racist. You know, the community is mostly comprised of corrections officers and police officers and people in the military. And so I was recently unfriended by a family friend for calling out their racism in their posts. And, you know, it does generate a fear, and not a fear of losing my life, as so many people in the Black community face, and of racism and police brutality, but it raises the fear of being outcasted by my own community because I support Black Lives Matter and avidly support that, and I'm actively trying to be anti-racist. And I will tell you that I've not been the best at this. I could do so much better, but honestly, it feels so hard and so uncomfortable. But I keep telling myself, Nicole, this is not as uncomfortable as having a knee on your neck for nearly 9 minutes and dying at the hands of police officers. And it is not nearly as uncomfortable as dying at the hands of police brutality or having a child and not having them come home because of police brutality. So I'm going to stop there.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that if you in your heart of hearts believe that if you raised your fist in solidarity to represent that, I'm also getting emotional with you, that it's totally okay, in my opinion, right? So I think that if you can connect with your emotional intelligence and then act from there, I think that the butterfly effect will be more effective. And I think that what I wanted to show also in this example of what happened in the 68 Olympics is that, you know, it does take someone going out of their comfort zone and maybe not knowing what's going to happen next, maybe getting backlash from the workplace, or maybe getting backlash from, you know, their community, or now we have social media. And I would just say, you know, more power to everyone who is taking a stance. And I just, you know, if within your communities, I would also challenge you to create some spaces where you can find out how to support each other when you do take a stance, so that we don't have to revert back to, you know, 1968, when this, you know, person from Australia who clearly was like working on becoming the best in his field and actually was rewarded for that, was no longer able to enter into that field, and how distracting and how disgusting actually that is. And just to learn from our mistakes, you know. Aaliyah, do you have anything that you want to chime in? I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this part of the picture isn't always talked about. We often talk about the two Black athletes who are more visibly showing up and putting their fists up in the air. I actually didn't know that the Australian athlete had participated in this way, because obviously, again, through the framing of the photograph, you can't even see his glove. You know, it's on the opposite side of his body. And so I think, to me, it also kind of speaks to, you know, unseen activism. Anyone can get on Instagram and post a black square. Anyone can get on social media and repost an article or a meme. And that's great, but it's also about, what are you doing in your real life to be anti-racist, to really step up and show up, right? It's not always going to be seen. We're not always going to see people making a donation to the NAACP. We're not always going to see people having tough conversations with relatives. So I think it's really cool to think about that, and to talk to each other about it, right? Because that's the only way that we're going to kind of know what people are doing, and maybe get inspired ourselves to become more involved in various ways. Oh, you can't make it to a protest. Well, maybe there's another thing that you can do that is going to be just as effective, and create that change. That is so important, right? It has to happen at so many levels. Racism is so deeply entrenched into our society that it can't just be one way of activism. It really does have to be multi-leveled, multifaceted, in order to squash this horrible thing called racism.
Absolutely. And I think I often say that the revolution will not be televised. And I think that hits the nail on the head on one of the ways you can interpret that statement. It's like, you know, the conversation you're having with your racist grandmother at the table probably is not going to be televised, but that's a part of the revolution, right? Or the conversation that you have, or what you do behind closed doors that you really feel like you're making an impact, that's not going to be televised, but it's still a part of the revolution. And I think if you can just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as well. And just one of the big points that I want to make is, you know, lift each other up in this moment, especially now, so that, you know, this situation doesn't have to happen again. And this was a white male that lost his job. So imagine being a woman, you know, in this time, or a woman of color, or it doesn't even matter, a woman in this time in 2020, that women are still facing a lot of really harsh standards. And so my biggest kind of thing to say after that would be to lift each other up and to hold each other accountable as well. And I invite everyone to do more research on this moment in history, but I just really want to dive into our guest speaker now. She's got me like wanting to speak with her a little more right now. So if we can go just a little ahead. We probably won't be going in order here, but that's okay. Oh, yes, perfect. We can go back to that. So this is just something that I wanted to share with you all because someone asked a question. This is actually really good to talk about right after that image that we saw in the 68 Olympics, because someone asked, Nicole, what was the question? How can I create more solidarity at work within the Black and Brown community? Something like that. So my recommendation, again, it's approach this with emotional intelligence, speak with people, speak with as many people as you can, and form your own ways of handling things like this. But I just wanted to highlight some of the boundaries that you can place around race-based discussions. And I definitely invite everyone to follow this Instagrammer that is just like hitting the nail on the head here. But so I will not engage in a debate to prove my experiences with racism to you. I do not have the capacity to teach you about racism, but there are great online resources like this Chat and Learn, for example. What you said is not sitting well with me. I would like to revisit this once I've processed it. And this conversation is exhausting me, and I would like for us to change the subject. I'm aware of the injustice against my people. Do not send me re-triggering videos or news. So just a couple of things, because I know that it's like a touchy topic, and I am a very open person, and if you watched our last Chat and Learn, not everyone is as open as me as far as like being willing to like just ask me as many questions as you like. You know, Cherie was like, go and Google it yourself, you know, like educate yourself, and then, you know, we can hang out. So again, speak to as many people as you can. And I just wanted to throw up the set of boundaries before we dive into some more of this conversation. So, but without further ado, I would like to introduce a really, really beautiful friend of mine. I asked her to join this call because she's doing beautiful work in her life. I've seen her grow into a beautiful mother now. She has a new baby. And we went to school together. We studied theater and film. And so we are both artists at heart. And she took her art and put it into the education system. So I'm just gonna pass the mic to her and let her introduce herself. And then I would love to dive into some systemic racism in education, just so that we can really be aware of what we're celebrating tomorrow as far as Independence Day is concerned. So Aaliyah, I'll pass the mic to you. And can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is such a fun picture. Hello, everyone. My name is Aaliyah Soler. I grew up, well, in various places. My mom was in the Army, so I lived in South Korea, Germany, and then towards the later years of my childhood and middle school, high school was in the south side of Atlanta in an area called McDonough, Georgia. Like Maryella said, we met in college, the good old University of Georgia. And then after that, I joined a program called Teach for America, and that took me to Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, in New York City, where I taught for the past 10 years in a public charter school. The last 4 years, I decided to diversify myself a little bit by getting my yoga teaching certification. And so my teaching career has been a lot about creating more access points to education for children of color through the arts and yoga and meditation. I have taught performing arts. I've started performing arts programs at schools. And then I've started yoga and meditation programs at schools as well. So yeah, that's what I've been doing the past 10 years. As Maryella stated, I have a new title to my name. It is Mommy. I have a daughter. She will be a year old in August. I can't believe it. She's hilarious and funny and just so stinking cute. And my family has recently moved. Yes, we moved during a pandemic from Brooklyn back to Atlanta to be closer to grandparents, AKA free childcare, and just have a somewhat more sustainable work-life balance, life pace in general. Also to be in here in time for the election in November. So we are excited to be here. I am transitioning from teaching full-time in schools and setting up programs in schools to doing more yoga work, healing retreats, and teaching yoga to anyone.
Yes,
Adult
anyone who wants to
children.
heal. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here, Leah. I've learned so much from you through these years, and I just want to dive right into some of the things that we'll talk about. If you can go to the next slide, Nicole. So one of the things that I mean, I would love to get together with Leah and just like hear like what's going on with you, and like you are starting a performance arts program in your school, and how beautiful and how important that is. And I just remember being really proud of my friend for essentially remixing some age-old children's stories that we grow up with. And I know, and I've talked about this on some of the other chats, it's like when you grow up as a person of color and none of the advertising or main characters in books or in films look like you have to do it like an extra step to like put yourself in their position to become the hero or to become the leader or to become, you know, the whatever, the part that is not often shown of your culture. And so I know a lot of you are probably familiar with like the story of Goldilocks, for example, and she told me that she was rewriting Goldilocks and putting so that her students could identify and like play these roles and really like insert themselves in the character. And so I just love like the simple change of like Goldilocks and having the main character have dreadlocks and having it be like, okay, this is a new Goldilocks that I've never seen, and I want to hear this story. And I'm sure that the kids had an amazing time. And I'm taking time to talk about education just before passing the mic back to Aaliyah, because on our last, or actually on our first call, one of the questions was like, I'm a recruiter. How can I find more Black women to, you know, join leadership roles? And Sade mentioned, you know, it's not as easy as going to LinkedIn, you know, and trying to find in a 2-second search, because recruiters, as we know, don't have a lot of time. They have to do things like this. They, you know, essentially now there are more and more programs that are being developed as far as like getting rid of bias, you know, with resumes and things like that. But she's like, you know, it takes going to a university or school where a lot of these kids are being filtered out. And really like nurturing that process so that they can, then you can have more of a pool of, you know, Black women in this case to choose from, so that they can essentially become leaders in tech. So that's why I want to just dive into systemic racism in education, so that we can just all be aware of it and then try to like move forward with supporting different ways that we can help eliminate it. And I'm not asking everyone to become, you know, an awesome teacher like Aaliyah for 10 years and like really, you know, do the footwork there, but there are ways that we can help move in progress. So Aaliyah, do you have anything you want to share about this moment, this picture here that we've got on screen?
I think that one thing I'll say is it wasn't until I was doing this work where I was, you know, teaching children that I realized, and children that didn't look like me, right? That I realized how deep racism was in our country. You know, I mean, I am white. I grew up loving Ariel and Aurora and all of the white Disney princesses. And then once I started teaching kindergarten through 4th grade children who were primarily Black and brown children, I started to see that they didn't get to have the same experience I had, because there were not, you know, necessarily Black superheroes until Black Panther came along, and that just like blew everything out of the water, right? Like every little guy has his Black Panther backpack on and he feels so amazing and so special because finally he has a superhero that looks like him. Oh my gosh, like those small moments that I would see as a teacher really inspired me. Like, how can I make a change? How can I, again, elevate Black stories? How can I elevate Black voices? Because it does trickle down to our kids. Our kids, everything is so connected these days that they're seeing everything happen, whether we realize it or not. And so, yeah, for me, it was just how can I, specifically as a teacher, help kids to be able to identify with things that they're seeing in their everyday life and feel empowered by that and not feel left out of a shared experience or of the conversation.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Aaliyah. And I'm sorry, Maryella, I just want to jump in and I want to ask you a question, because this is such a big topic now, right? Thinking about having white children and how do you teach them to be anti-racist? And so, can you tell us a little bit about your experience? And I'm interested in how young children realize that racism is a thing. And especially, I mean, I don't think white people even now realize that racism is a thing, or else we wouldn't have so many issues, right? Like this wouldn't be a problem in today's society. So it's a different narrative that we're living. And so I want to ask you about these young Black predominantly and then brown children, and how were they expressing that? Did they understand, besides not having heroes or superheroes or fairy princesses to look up to?
Totally. I mean, there are various ways that it can manifest, but thinking of a specific example, I would have students come into class in, say, second or third grade, saying things like knowing who Donald Trump was and knowing that he was making decisions that were going to affect their immigrant family members, from being able to come visit them, right? Something as simple as my grandma is no longer allowed to come here because she's Haitian, and those people are banned from the country right now. And then helping that child process those emotions of, putting together the pieces that somehow this person, this president had something to do with that. All the way to, some lessons that teachers are teaching or given to teach, or assessments that teachers are given, have very white names. They're not diverse in just naming the characters that are in a story, right? You don't see Trayvon in a children's book often. You see classic names. And again, I'm saying classic, meaning white, like Johnny, Billy, Tyler, Josh, whatever the name might be. So there are, again, the microaggressions of like things in textbooks, to various colors that come in a crayon box. You have to get a specially multicolor crayon box that has a multiple range of skin colors so that kids can actually color pictures of themselves that look like them. I remember I had a second grader who was, coloring a picture of himself. He showed it to me and he's like, "Miss Solar, look, I made a picture that looks like me." And it really, I could like see in his eyes, it almost made me cry, like looking at it, because I was like, this is so precious and it should just be automatic. It shouldn't be, oh my gosh, I get to use a crayon that looks like me. Like that should be normal. So yeah, I mean, there are small moments that you kind of can see racism existing within education. And then there are bigger moments where you can see like more clear things around like DACA, for example, that just was upheld by the Supreme Court. But that's an example of a policy that supports education as well for undocumented people. That can be more of a bigger example of racism or xenophobia in education.
Absolutely. And Nicole, if it's okay, let's dive into what Ben & Jerry's is doing. I just wanted to highlight them. You can go and click on that link so we can walk through some of that. I had a bunch of slides prepared, but I'm glad that we're taking our time so that we can really get into this. So I see that someone has written in the chat box, first of all, children copy their parents and other adults' behavior and attitude. And I hope that we can kind of tackle some of that with reading this. And this statement from Ben & Jerry's. And the reason I'm highlighting Ben & Jerry's because I just want to like really challenge companies, organizations to take initiative and share material like this, and not to just have Black be a trending thing, or human rights and Black Lives Matter be a trending thing, and then you move on to the next thing because that is what the market is asking for. So that's why I'm highlighting Ben & Jerry's, and I just wanted to walk us through some of what they've written here, how systemic racism infiltrates education, because tomorrow's a big day in the States, it's Independence Day, but I think and I'm sure some of you can agree that there is this sense of false freedom. I'm sure everyone is reading like so many different beautiful books right now, and you're just like seeing the realness in that. Maybe you haven't experienced that in your personal lives, but just to really see that, there is a broken promise in the sense of freedom. So I'm just gonna read a little bit here, and then we can comment together, and then we'll take action a little later. So a broken promise: go to school, do well, get into college, and you're on your way to a good job and a happy life. You put in the work and you'll be rewarded. That's the promise of education. Sounds great, like it should be true. But the closer you look, the more this promise begins to seem a bit more like a fantasy. No one denies that education is important. It's just that the path to achievement and advancement is easier for some than for others. People of color face barriers to success every single day from a very early age that whites never even have to think, let alone worry about. And I can speak from a personal perspective. I'm the first generation in my family to go to college, and the first bilingual person in my family. So I feel like a part of my work is to break some of these, these chains that have been really heavily rooted in our culture. So I don't know if you wanted to comment on that, Aaliyah, or if we want to go on to the next paragraph here.
Let's keep going.
Let's keep going. Okay, Nicole, do you mind reading this one?
Not at all. Racism starts early. Remember preschool? Learning to write your name, playing with dolls and blocks, jumping in puddles. That's the preschool experience. Also, part of the experience, apparently, racism. It turns out that Black students are much more likely to be suspended from preschool than white students. They make up 18% of all preschoolers, but represent almost 50% of all preschool suspensions. Oh my God. Compare that to white kids who make up 43% of all preschool enrollment, yet represent 26% of those receiving suspensions. Why is this happening? A recent study might shine some light on what's going on. It found that Black boys as young as 10 are routinely perceived to be significantly older and less innocent when compared to white boys of the same age. In our society, the suspicion of guilt follows people of color throughout their lives. And I want to quickly add that I didn't actually read this before we had, jumped into this. I'm incredibly surprised, one, by preschool suspensions. I didn't know that was a thing that happened, but also, I mean, I'm not so surprised by the numbers, but I am. It's disgusting, obviously, to one extent. And so this is just incredible. So thanks for sharing this, and I'll pass it over to you, Aaliyah, or Maryella.
Yeah, I think it's good to just like look at this, right? Because it's like, oh, this is probably happening, but it's like here in the back of our mind, and just to like really see that this is happening, right? And Aaliyah, I'm sure you have some things you want to comment on.
Well, I think there are some pretty obvious parallels between this and what we have been seeing with police brutality. You see people like Dylan Roof, who, went into a church and killed nearly a dozen people, being escorted peacefully to jail with a stop by Burger King on the way. Whereas you have boys, young Black boys, who are coming home from a convenience store who look suspicious and therefore have been brutally murdered for the past decade. I mean, under this current situation, but this has obviously been happening since 1619. So yeah, I mean, you can just see that it starts early. It starts in school, where Black boys look more dangerous than the white boys, so they get more punished. And it's wrong. It needs to be stopped. And I think once we make these changes within the education system and within the policing system and within the government, like, we will be seeing more progress, but it has to happen in multiple places, not just in police precincts, but it must happen in schools. It must happen everywhere.
Thank you for that. Let's scroll down to the next one that I want to read, which has to do with actually that's the school to prison pipeline. So this actually will validate a lot of things that you were saying, Aaliyah. So Do you want to read this, Nicole? I love that you haven't read this, and so I love to see your reaction when you are reading it.
Perfect. Okay, so according to a 2015 report from the National Center for Education Statistics, there are more than 43,000 school resource officers and other sworn police officers, and an additional 39,000 security guards working in the nation's 84,000 public schools. Since when did school discipline require so many police or security officers? We think it's particularly troubling that law enforcement is so often being called in to discipline Black students on school grounds. The phenomenon has become known as the school to prison pipeline because it's channeling students right into the criminal justice system where people of color can expect unfair treatment as a matter of course. When a simple altercation at school leads to an arrest for assault, something has gone terribly wrong. And before you or Maryella or Aaliyah chime in, I was also just reading this, thinking about the number that there are of security guards and school resource officers in private schools, because obviously I'm sure they're not showing you the numbers for a reason. Either they don't exist, and it's interesting to think about that and think about how this is already setting children up who are in the public school system for failure. I mean, obviously with the stuff that we just read, but looking at this, because somebody who's going to private school obviously is in a different socioeconomic standing than somebody who's in a public school, right? This is just very, very interesting.
Very shocking. Aaliyah, do you want to speak on that? Actually, before you speak on it, I want to share like a real experience that I had when I was living in Houston. And I was hired to be an English tutor at this alternative school, which were like maybe, I don't know, an arrangement of containers that people were, that kids that were being kicked out of schools, which were mostly Black kids, and they were expected to go to these alternative schools. When you entered, there's a metal detector. There are police in the hallways, and they had experienced, detention in the public schools, and they were being kicked out to these alternative schools, or something was happening and they were being kicked out and put in these alternative schools. And I would see the teachers there with very little resources, but the expectation for them to compete on the same level to get into, higher education or to get into the workforce. And it really just blew my mind. And it just really made me so upset that happened. So, and it continues to happen. So Leah, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, totally. I think, there have been a lot of conclusions drawn around literacy rates and prisons, right? Like, and how this school to prison pipeline kind of translates into achievement within schools. So for me, as a performing arts teacher, teaching theater, dance, acting to kids in K-8 for the past 10 years, this of course looks like reading literacy, but for me, it also looked like arts literacy, kind of going back to what Nicole was saying. At private schools, not only do you not see as many safety officers or school safety officers, but you also see a lot more programs for children, right? You see money going to providing arts education, going to providing after school programs, going to provide a social worker, going to provide a guidance counselor. There are so many access points for children and resources for children in more affluent, not only private schools, but public schools, because our public schools are largely funded by property tax. And if you're in a more wealthy area, the houses are worth more money. And so there's going to be more property tax going to your school. In these areas, they have all these things that kids can be involved in and can nurture their love of learning. In more poor areas, you don't have as much property tax. You don't have as many really excellent qualified teachers going to work there because they're not getting paid as much. You don't have as many after school programs. You don't have as many arts programs. And so, this school to prison pipeline, it isn't just about safety officers in schools. It's across the board, right? It's about access and resources in many ways. And I think a good question to start asking ourselves is, why are we so eager to put police officers in schools and pay those salaries over putting an arts program in a school or a meditation program in a school that could help children actually express themselves and find success in school and find these opportunities in school versus just trying to put more police officers, safety officers in school.
Yeah, and then I hope that everyone on the call can just, you know, see how that is connected to where we are today and how there is, you know, a lack of people of color in in leadership roles, and how, you know, there are more people of color in prisons, and just to, like, you know, use this as a chance to do your research and to educate yourself, and again to put this in your reoccurring mind frame, so that it's not just like, oh yeah, this happens and it's sad, but it's really not affecting me, so I can distance myself comfortably, to really take action by supporting different organizations, signing different petitions, and just reading more, you know, and not being consumed with such mainstream dialogue that really gets us focused on the wrong things, in my opinion. So with that said, I want to hear if Nicole or anyone on the line has something to say, and I'd like to take some action together as well. All right. I hear the birds chirping, so maybe, so good. It's okay. I'm sure everyone is digesting because this is a heavy topic. Someone here in the chat wrote definitely meditation. Good. I'm glad you.
Yeah, a quick final word. There's so much good work happening in this realm. I know we're running out of time, and I just dropped a lot of like heaviness. So I do want to say that within the education space, there are a lot of yoga programs and meditation programs going into schools to help cut things like the high suspension rates, high expulsion rates in schools. I believe it's a lot of Baltimore City schools that have been piloting a program that has been incredibly helpful in not only keeping suspension rates low, but actually helping students process any traumas that they've been experiencing in their lives. So that's something that's happening, as well as things that we can do. Vote in your local elections, vote for the school board, vote for the school superintendent. These are important positions that we don't really think about much, but those people have a lot of control over what happens on a more local level in your school districts. And so in whatever ways you can, like, try to research that for yourself, like Maryella was saying, and get involved in that way through your vote. It's a big helpful thing.
And I just want to, you know, piggyback off of this and say thank you so much for being here and sharing all this. And, you know, I also want to thank everyone who's on the line. And, you know, I think it's important that we continue these conversations and have this type of event recurring, because I've already started to see the media die down, right? As soon as the violent protesters left, now there's no more media coverage all of a sudden, because it's just not interesting anymore when people aren't violent and representing a sort of stereotype, even if it's not that group, right? And, you know, I just want to share something. This is making me particularly emotional today, just thinking about all of this and learning about all this. Okay, so I'm going to try to say it before I start crying, but you know, I've always been an avid Black Lives Matter supporter, but I haven't always been anti-racist, and I haven't always actively been anti-racist. And I'm not proud of that. But as I've said on many chats before, it's not about what I haven't done before, it's about what I'm doing now. And I think that one of the things that struck me the most this time was thinking about myself and thinking about my son, who's white, and thinking about how I will never ever have to worry about going back to the United States and worrying that he will be killed by the hands of police because he's white, because he's not Black. And that's my reality. And there is, it's just, okay, I'm just gonna leave it there. And so that's just a lot of heaviness that I've been carrying. And I am very grateful for the space to like let that out and share that, because I think there's a lot of other people who are feeling the same way. And so, you know, without taking too much more time, everyone on the call, we do leave space for action at the end, because this is very important to myself, to Maryella, and as we said before, life is busy. There's no excuse for not taking action, but it's okay because, as we said, it's not about what we haven't done, it's about what we're doing moving forward. And so everyone on this call is invited to take action with us, take a part of this conversation, share this, invite your family members, invite your friends, because this is a really important conversation. So Maryella, I'm going to pass it back over to you and go to the video that we wanted to watch.
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, so before we watch the video, I want to go to a link so that we can all sign something together, and then we can end with this video, if that's okay, just so that we can honor everyone's time. So if you can go back, actually, yeah, I can just scroll up, be part of the solution here, sign this very important petition. So if you can drop that in the chat, and if we can all sign that together, I think that that would be nice for us to act together on these last moments here. So if you want to drop in the chat a 1, yeah, perfect. Drop a 1 when you sign. And I'll just read here a little bit about what it is. So again, Ben & Jerry's is doing a great job with just calling everyone out, calling themselves out, and you know, creating content to share how we can educate ourselves and really make some differences here. So, so this is, if you believe that every American citizen has the right to vote, then support the reauthorization of the Voting Act's right. This legislation was critical in preventing states with histories of discrimination from passing laws that suppress the vote of particular groups, primarily people of color, within the states judged to have the worst cases of disenfranchisement. Black voter registration nearly doubled after the VRA. The Supreme Court gutted a key provision of the law in 2013, rendering the VRA ineffective. It's time to reauthorize the VRA. So when you have signed it, go ahead and put a 1 in the chat box. And
I just wanted to jump in really quick, Maryella, because I know we have some international people on the line. So if you don't have a zip code, which is like a postal code in the US, feel free to use mine. So I'll drop that in the chat so that you can use the zip code. Yeah, that's just what that means. So, and I don't know if it would register international zip codes. Yeah, feel free to use that. Okay, so now I can drop my 1.
And then another thing you
it.
can do, yeah, Nicole, another thing you can do for our folks that are not living in the States, I would recommend going to this this page that we were just reading from Ben & Jerry's, and they have some other resources there as well that you can sign, or just educate yourself and pass it on to any friends that you do have in the States, and let them know how they can support, just in case, you know, your vote doesn't get counted because you aren't in the States for some reason. You know, there are always blockers that happen, and we just want to like spread the love. So you have that link in the chat, and I just recommend going over that yourself, and there's some points there for you to take action. And then of course, join us on our next chat next Friday, and we will have more ways to sign petitions and take action together. Time has flown by. We've only got 3 minutes left. So another thing I wanted to share, this is actually something I have discovered as of this morning, which is awesome. I'm gonna be looking more into this, and I just wanted to share this now. So Birthright Africa, discover roots and uncover greatness. If you can scroll down a little bit, what I like about this program is that they are helping Black Americans, or people who identify as Black American, African American, to go on these study abroad trips to learn more about their culture. And then they also show studies on how when one knows where they came from, they can, you know, they're more confident in doing X, Y, and Z. And they're also helping these folks get into leadership roles in the workplace. So, you know, this is also just tying in all the things that we're talking about today. I'm going to do some more research because my sister sent this link to me this morning. This is one of the beautiful things about this historic moment, is that, you know, we are learning about so many people who have already been working in this way, and then people who are creating new platforms to just bridge this gap so that we can really, really see that we are a part of this human experience, and there's no reason to deny anyone life, education, and freedom because of the color of their skin or where they're from. So I think that if you want to take action now, I would sign up for their newsletter and then just get more information from them in that way. And then you can sign up for the different things that they're relating all together. So Nicole, if you want to drop that link in the chat box, and then everyone can sign up for their newsletter. I've already signed up. This is another way we can take action together, and then, you know, share it with people who you think would benefit from this. And I mean, like, people of color, Black people in particular, and then, you know, employers who might be looking to hire some of these people who have gone through this program. You know, I think it takes an extra step for us to really make some change. And instead of just, this is something that I like to, this is like an imaginary situation that I like to propose. When I went to San Francisco and I talked to a bunch of awesome developers and tech folks about the importance of emotional intelligence and diversity and inclusion in the workplace, I said, you know, it's one thing to like have a space at the table saying, you know, we need to fill this space and we're looking for someone who's diverse, and like everyone's just sitting there waiting on that space to be filled. It's not pretty active. So what I recommend is like getting up from the table, going to find that person, and don't just say, hey, we got a seat at the table, give me a cocktail, for, you know, to the next person in the next sentence. It's like, we got a seat at the table, you take their hand, you invite them to the table, because how intimidating is it to be like the only person that looks like you at a table full of other kinds of people that have historically left you out, even though maybe the intention isn't that right now. So it takes a couple of steps to actually make effective change. And I bring that visual to your awareness, just so that, you know, it's not like, hey, cool, I signed this, I did my job. No, sign it, share it, speak about it, you know, bring people to the table, hold their hand and bring them to the table, show them that they're welcome, and bring some emotional intelligence into this, you know, big fight that we're fighting, which is awesome and revolutionary. And this is a very important time. So how are you a part of it right now is really, I would have you reflect on. And I would just like to end that, end my voice, end my chat by saying that, you know, how are you making a difference? And when you move on to the next experience, when you pass on to the next experience, are you going to be proud of the actions that you made in this historic moment?
Thank you so much for that, Maryella. And I know we didn't get to the video, but I'm happy to save that for next time. I just want to say thank you so much again for our weekly chats. And Aaliyah, thank you so much for being on today and providing us with that information. And you know, this really is one of my favorite chats of the week, and I'm just so grateful to be able to be here, be transparent, and be authentic with all of you. And so with that, I'll say thank you to all of you, and feel free to have your closing remarks, Leah, and thank you, Maryella.
Thank you all so much for having me. That's all I'll say. Thank you. Thank you. This was awesome. I'm really glad you guys are doing these chats. Nice work.
And we'll put in the rewatch email, you know, information about Aaliyah if you want to follow her and support the great work that she's doing. That would be beautiful. And so, and then you'll also have my information. Everyone is welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn and let me know how I can help you share your voice.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.